Going on, guys? Welcome back to my workbench. Dan here, and we're going to be basically looking at some more cars here and some locomotives that I got done, and I'm going to be reviewing you guys on some new projects that I've just started up, and we're also going to look at the layout. We got a lot to show here, so I'm going to try to kind of jump right into this. The first thing you guys are going to be seeing here is this, and you're probably recognizing this. I've shown a few of these before. It's a trash flat car. This is not one of mine. This is actually for a client, and this goes back to something I started back in 2016 actually. If you recall, I took on a project where I was doing 100 trash flat cars with 200 matching containers for all of these flat cars. This project originally I started in 2016, like I said, and it's actually migrated from 3 different other workbenches, locations, things like that. And I actually put the project on hold because me and my client actually had different goals and ambitions at the time, so we decided to kind of take a break from this project. I set it aside. I boxed up all these cars, set them aside, kind of forgot about them for a little while, and actually a few weeks ago he got back in touch and he decided that we wanted to start the project back up. So I've actually decided to go ahead and start working on these cars again. And this is one that I just finished up. Like I said, I had 100 of these. These are from the original run that Atlas did. These are Atlas 89-foot spine cars, the trash flats for U.S. waste. So with these cars, I'm doing 100 of them. I've gotten quite a few done so far, but I think I got 70 more to go. This is USWX 40154. This is a good example of the kind of weathering I'm going to be doing on all of these cars. It's pretty extensive. You paint the wheels, the trucks. Tons of these have graffiti on them. You get lots of garbage juice splatter. Rust runs down from these little center posts. These are what support the containers, these little braces, so there's usually generally a lot of rust on these points. I added the safety stripes, changed a little bit of data where needed. I'm putting end data on it, but at this point it's kind of pointless because once you weather them you can't even see them. I'm upgrading all these with double shelf couplers. You take the double shelf coupler, install it, and then shave the top head off. That way you have just that lower shelf. But this is a good example of the kind of weathering I'm going to be doing on all of these cars. And in a second I'll actually show you guys the rest of these. But this is a good example of the kind of weathering. You just pretty much do tons of graffiti. I try to look at videos of these actual trains. They generally run about 80, 90, almost 100 cars anyway. So you can get a good idea of how these things weather pretty quick. And they're all pretty much the same in terms of this style of weathering. Some of them are a little bit cleaner, some of them are really dirty, some of them are just kind of covered in graffiti. So that's basically what I'm going to be working on for pretty much the rest of this year, just going through and doing tons of graffiti work, decal work, and things like that on all these flat cars. So it's finally going again. I know a lot of you guys asked me about what happened to that project. It's still in the works. It's been a long time, but we're going to try to kind of get it done. I'm going to at least get the flat cars done first and just get them, I guess, the hell out of my house, because I've had them hogging up storage in my basement for years now, ever since I actually moved in here. So that one's on the side, and we'll come back and I'll show you guys what the rest of the ones I have done actually look like. Coming back to the workbench, I finished up a couple hopper cars that I'm going to bring in here. I've been doing tons of 4750s, as you guys know, for my salt training, a couple grain cars as I get them. But I wanted to kind of get some different prototypes, kind of mix things up a bit. And I actually recently got this Atlas car pretty cheap on eBay. I think it was like maybe 16 bucks because it was missing the couplers and the wheels, so I got it dirt cheap. And I had a spare pair of Atlas trucks, and of course I had couplers. I went and got it, and I patched it up for NOKL. This is actually an old Soybean car. So I did the decal patching using some various sheets, did the weathering, added safety striping, and changed the patching a little bit. I faded it down, and then I did all the dark streaking stains. It's got tons of side swipes, which I did with oils. The underbody's weathered up and everything like that. On the top here you can really see the stains from the grain. Corn also does this. They'll usually mold up and you get these black stains on the paint of the car, on the hatches, things like that. You can see the lock bars are kind of rusted up. It's kind of bleeding over onto the walkways a little bit. But you can do this technique by using a little bit of black powder, and you just kind of streak it down the side and then seal it back in, and you get these really cool effects. And it's kind of, I can pull it on the other side here. This side has a little bit more streaking. But there you can kind of see, that's generally how these cars weather. If any of you are familiar, Central Soya has a ton of cars similar to this. They all look like this. They all weather like this. It's very common. You see it on the big Trinity, what is it, 5150s, the 4-bay covered hopper, the soybean cars. Same kind of thing. You see a lot of side scrapes. You see a lot of dirt, debris, things like that. So that's what I was kind of going for with this one, and I think it turned out pretty good. This was kind of a weekend project, so I just basically did some light washes on it first. I built up the streaking, got that done. So that's a nice car I can kind of throw into my fleet now, giving me a little bit more variety. The next car I have is yet another 4750, and I'll keep this brief. This is just kind of weathered up like I've been doing all of them, with brushed, acrylic, and oil work down the sides. This one has the really cool stencil style AEX patch up. I believe this was originally an HLCX car. The prototype was, I think, but I did this one based off the prototype photos. Added the scrapes and scratches, typical amount of grime and stuff on the bays, lots of scratching and pitting. Quite a few hours went into this one. I replaced the top hatch with tangent style, the smooth hatch, as you can see there. It's got tons of rust pitting and scratching, and then all the kick up and all the good stuff on the end. This side's one of my favorites. I like the variation in the rust, and it's got a little bit of minor repairs, some pitting and things like that to kind of break it up. And I was actually on vacation a couple weeks back, and while I was on vacation I brought this car and a few box cars to work on. I'll show you the box cars in a second. So when I had a little bit of spare time, I just kind of threw some weathering on these undecorated cars as I worked on them. And I actually got them wrapped up on vacation, so these were actually done away from the workbench, but here they are. So that's the AEX 16663, which is a really cool car. I like that one a lot. The next one is even heavier rust bucket. This one's got the real bright light rust, which I achieved with some raw sienna. This is AEX 10358, and as you can see, pretty much the same process as this one. Once I did the burnt umber washes, however, I followed behind with the heavier pitting, and then used the raw sienna to get that more bright, fresher rust that's standing up the side of this car. I added some different little decals, changed the patching a little bit, added my own decals and patchwork, of course. Weathered the trucks, the underbays, added some graffiti. Kick up on the ends, of course, because all these 4750s have that kick up spray. There's the patching. Of course, replace the hatches again, like I do on all these pretty much. I got a bunch of these hatches. I just made another order with Tangent, got them here in last week. So I'll kind of slowly go back as I pull these cars back out and replace more of the hatches with these, because I definitely like this style much better. On the top here you can see the more extensive oil work, though. That's hours and hours of oil layering. You just kind of streak it out, build it up underneath the walkway and the hatch, and then pull it down, and then just build it up until you're satisfied with the layer of rust. And then on the opposite side it's pretty much the same thing. You just build it up in layers like this, and you get this really cool effect. So this one is definitely a little bit more unique in that sense. I found a picture of one of these cars sitting in a storage line, and I was like, I had to model this kind of rust because I haven't done one that looked exactly like this. So I was able to complete that, and I'm honestly pretty satisfied with the results. It's a different kind of car. It's another one that'll kind of be an eye-catcher, because you know you have a train that basically looks mostly like this, of maybe 50 cars that all look like this, and then you have these weird ones that kind of stand out, right? So they add a little bit more interest, a little bit more flavor to a long consist. So that's why I wanted to make one like this. And again, I'm really happy with that rust. I really like that roof there again. So it's another kind of piece of eye candy for my trade, if you will. So that's that covered hopper, and I think that's going to be the last of the covered hoppers for a minute. I'm going to start working on more box cars, some trash cars, tank cars, of course these flat cars, and some locomotives here. What I want to talk about next is box cars. I've been going through and selling off a bunch, and I'll show you guys what I'm going to be getting rid of, but I've also found a couple cars that I decided to keep because they're maybe a little bit harder to find, and they're worth saving. So I have this old TTX car here from Athearn. These are the rarer version where they have the more common railcar pooling font there and the large TTX logo and then the classic Railbox logo. This is one I was about to sell off, but I decided, you know what, let's just repatch it, re-decal it, add some more graffiti, and that's what I did. So I re-weathered this one, changed the weathering around a little bit. I added some fresh graffiti and patchwork, added some new decals just to kind of give it a little bit more flavor. Changed the graffiti around a little bit, touched some stuff up, weathered it just a little bit more lightly. And then the big thing that I did was I added the long shank knuckle couplers and then those specialty air hoses that these cars have. This model didn't originally have the air hose. It had the coupler lift bar, it didn't have the coupler, it didn't have that air hose. So I added those to the model to improve that overall. And I also improved the graffiti on this side. This was originally what I hand painted a couple years back. I just went back, refreshed it, touched up my lines, sharpened the edges a little bit, added a little bit more graffiti here and there to just, again, kind of refresh it overall, add a little bit more flair and interest. And again, just kind of overall enhanced the weathering to make this car look a lot better. And I'm very satisfied with that. And this goes to show you, even these kind of cars, a lot of times you can always go back, you can always add more artwork, you can always add something to these. These cars are never really complete. I could go back 10 years from now if I still have this one and add more rust dots to it. if I wanted to, or graffiti or something. You know, these things are an uncompleted canvas, is like I like to call them. I got a 3-pack of boxcars. These are all exact rails, which are real nice. I've been slowly kind of getting rid of my older RTR models and replacing with better, highly detailed tangent cars, exact rail cars, Genesis cars, things like that. This is one I worked on vacation. I put it together pretty quick. I did some light oil washes down the sides, weathered the door up a little bit. I hand painted all of the graffiti basically off of prototype photos. Added the safety striping, I repatched it, I did all that really cool effect work there, added some decals, weathered up the roof. The roof is just done with a little bit of stains, but this was repainted in 2015, so I tried to make it look still relatively fresh. I just dulled it down mainly. And then on the opposite side, again, still pretty fresh. You can see I added the most interesting part here would be the little barcode labels, which you see on these cars all the time. You can see little markings where they peeled old ones off, replaced them, tagged them up. So this one is loaded, in effect. I just got a little bit of graffiti tagging there. This one is the next one from their newest run, CIRR. What is that? 90204. This one has some really cool prototype graffiti, and this is one I spent many hours on while on vacation, because I worked on this one and this one on vacation. And I did the big graffiti pieces first, went back, added the washes over that to kind of weather it in, blend it into the car side a little bit, repatched over it, like added the read data portions there, new safety striping, graffiti, re-stenciled the numbers over that, because sometimes the railroads will do that. They won't fully repatch over the graffiti work, they will just put the number decals back over the graffiti, so that was something different. And then the roof has the sealant around the panel seams there. I thought that was pretty cool. And then you got a ton of extensive rust pitting, which I worked out and rendered with oils and built that up. And then on the opposite side, it's got more graffiti, just kind of a real hodgepodge of different styles of artwork that I used from Google and Road Picture Archives. I repatched this side here, and again you can see the really nice hand-painted and drawn graffiti all over the car, which I'm very happy with. You got the re-stencil COTS block there, safety striping, little bits of tagging, and then very light weathering work down the side. These cars generally weather very simply, but it's the graffiti artwork that really makes them stand out. Then the last one is one I've had in my storage collection for quite a while. This is an EEC car, and this one is one of the older runs of Exact Rails. So I faded this one down, gave it kind of an orange tint, as you can see. Added the graffiti again. You got the weathered up placard there. The old tack board's kind of just rotting away. You got some decals added there, like the barcodes. Old graffiti patched over. You got all kinds of rust work, patchwork done, replacements, parts added, scratches. Usual level of work for these, but again, it's not insanely crazy. The heaviest portion of weathering on this car is the roof, where you can see I built up the oil layering to represent the panels that are starting to rust back over. I thought that was a pretty cool little effect, so I went ahead and added that to this car. And then on this side, you got the really neat graffiti again. Pretty sweet. Just oopsie. Add these little bits of tagging, scribble work, and then the really cool artwork there. And then you can also see on the door, I spent a lot of time building up the scratching and pitting on the door, because a lot of times these doors get really rusted, even on these fresh repaints. So I modeled that. This one has some barcodes added, indicating it's loaded, and you can see the nice little bits of just washes, but it's very light. Of course, the trucks are weathered up too. So that's the 3 box cars I've gotten done, and these are just going to generally go maybe traveling together, because generally you see a lot of these cars, these kinds of cars will travel together in sections, usually not broken up or individually. They usually just travel together between terminals and stuff, so I'm going to probably run these 3 all together. So again, you can kind of see how you could have that really cool variety where they all about look the same, but you get that cool difference in artwork, graffiti styles, patchwork to keep things interesting, so that's pretty cool. I got to get some more of these style cars, because I really got to replenish my fleet, so I have a lot of these plain Jane kind of just red repaints. But this is a good start here, and again, these were all accomplished within about 2 weeks. That's pretty good. Another car I wanted to show you guys. These are a pretty rare model, and I also have the SP version too. This is a Wisconsin Central patch-out boxcar that was offered by Athearn and Genesis. I had another one of these originally, but I'm about to sell it, and I replaced it with a model I recently purchased. I originally got these for a friend as a Christmas present, but it didn't work out, so I decided to keep these and just basically re-weather these and replaced the older ones that I had because I wasn't really satisfied with the weathering on the ones that I originally did. So I just went back and basically weathered this one to my current standards. So I added tons of rust streaking to it. It was pre-faded and patched. Keep that in mind. This is why it's kind of rare. I just added all the graffiti to the sides. I did all the rust on the doors, repainted some portions, lots of graffiti work as you can see on this side. And I really like that overall. I just hand painted everything, kind of weathered it over. The rust streaking is pretty crazy on these door tracks. These PC&F cars get really beat up, especially the older paint schemes like this one happens to be. You can see there's a lot of streaking, and that's hours of just layering one streak at a time, building it up, blending it out, building more onto it, working it down the sides, just blending everything together, but keeping it, you know, kind of just thin layers at a time, because you don't want to chunk up the oil. It'll start building up too quick and you'll make a mess. But you can see I added the safety striping too. Not this stuff on the bottom. This was part of the decal work. I added the new DOT stripes where they basically re-added them at a certain point in time. Weathered up the ends, did all that work there. Really grimed up. Emphasis here is on the coupler pocket there, the coupler, the brake wheel, the area just really at the base there where a lot of that grime and stuff is going to spray up onto the panels there, and then the rest of it's going to work up from the top. The roof came out really cool. You can see it's a real splotchy rust technique where I've just been using some smaller brushes to just build up heavy oil work, and it ends up working really well for these kinds of cars, so I'm pretty satisfied with that. On this side there's no real graffiti. It's just kind of a good example of that really unique patchwork that Athearn did for this car, and I can't find prototype photos of this original car, so I kind of got to give Athearn the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure this car exists, I just haven't found actual photos of it yet, so I just kind of weathered it to how I think it would look if it was still around, because these older Wisconsin Central box cars are definitely not aging very well. They're a lot of times just completely caked in graffiti, very beat up, got a lot of rust, so I just kind of weathered this one off that idea, but you can see there's still a lot of cool rust effects and things, so this one definitely adds a little bit of interest to a collection. And like I said, this is a replacement model for one I originally had that I'm going to be selling off, which I'll show you in a second. So that one is done and I'm really happy with it. Just to show you guys the next box car I'm working on, this is a rare exact rail car now. It just came out and these were sold out instantly, but this is what I'm going to be showing you guys in a later video. It's still in the process of weathering, but this is going to give you guys a little sneak peek of what's to come in the next video. This really cool one here. So that's that LRS. That'll be coming down the road. Like I said, it's still kind of in the process of weathering, but it's just about done. Let me see. The other thing I'll wrap up with this video here is these two. I'm currently in the process of redetailing these. I'm going through and selling off a lot of these BFTX cars that I made because I just made too many. I only need a certain number. I'm keeping my best examples that have the best artwork, that just need some basic weathering overhaul. So I'm going back through with these, redetailing them. I've added tangent trucks with the rotating bearing caps to these. I'm going to replace the stirrups. I've already replaced the end details with the tangent coupler lift bars, Tichy air hoses, new couplers. So I'm just going to go back with these, re-decal them with my better decaling, add a little bit more rust, touch up the paint where needed, just make them look a little bit better. So I got that one there, and then this one, which was a little bit more recently done. The weathering's pretty good on this. All I really got to do is just go back and add a little bit more rust streaking here and there. And then again, I've just replaced some of the details. I got to replace the stirrups. I've replaced the wheel sets with tangent tricks, so they got the rotating bearings on them. But overall, you can see there's a lot of time already spent in these cars. I'm just going back and I just want to add a little bit more detail to them to make them look a little bit better. So that's something you can look forward to seeing in the next video as well, is these once they're done. So the locomotive I've worked on this year so far is HLCX 4211. This one is a really cool engine, and if you follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you've probably seen photos of this thing by now. This is one of the ex-Iowa, Chicago, and Eastern lease units. Went to HLCX in 2014, 2015 these went out in lease service. HLCX 4211 was actually stationed in Fostoria, Ohio, and at the time I lived in Fostoria, Ohio with my at the time girlfriend. And this locomotive was stationed right across the parkway from me, actually. So every morning I'd wake up and I'd get to see them fire this thing up and move it around and shuttle it around the yard. And I have a ton of cool experiences getting to see this thing run. So it kind of has a special place in my heart, to be honest. And it actually was running with HLCX 4225, which is an ex-Chessie System GP40. It was a really cool pair, and I really did like growing up in that time, being able to see this thing. So like I said, this kind of locomotive, it it really does have a lot of good memories for me, so I wanted to have a model of it, and I made a model originally. It wasn't very good, so I went back. I found another one of these because they're kind of hard to find. I just basically got the Athearn Genesis model. I removed the lettering from the long hood, and I added my own decals to the cab sides, renumbered it. I added all the prototype specific details. It already had ditch lights. All I had to really do was just remove the Iowa, Chicago, and Eastern decals here and there. I added the new coupler lift bars, a new plow, air hose there, new coupler. I cleaned up the trucks, got a nice light dusting of grime and road dust on there, lots of sand. Grimed up the fuel tank. I added the prototype specific fuel tank details like the waste retention tank, the breather pipes, things like that. But overall, the majority of this locomotive is actually pretty clean. You can see there's a little grease puddle there. I did that with some thinner. Walkway's a little bit dusty. You got some streaking and a little bit of grime, lots of oily grease kind of building up. But these weren't in too bad a shape when HLCX got them, because they were pretty fresh paint when they got them. There's a little bit of rust starting kind of around the clean air room. Up on the roof there's a lot of grime and exhaust soot. The fans are kind of dirty, but again, it's not very, very dirty. It's relatively grimy, but not overwhelmingly dirty. On the back, I just added the new jumper cable, new coupler lift bar, the couple other little details, just kind of spice it up. It's got tons of mud splatter and things, because I like to add all those textured effects to my locomotives especially. Renumbered the hood there. I really like that bizarre light package. That was something SP had on these late production units, but it was really cool. This is another one of those kind of unique things that I really wanted to. I love the unique paint job, and I love the unique details of this thing, so that's one of the big reasons I wanted to model it. On this side here, you can see again it's got all the really cool road-specific details. The trucks are nicely weathered. I added the pipes there again. Nicely grimed up fuel tank, and just an overall nice little level of grime and dirt. But again, it's not overwhelmingly dirty. It still took me a couple weeks to put this thing back together, but it turned out really good. I'm really happy with it. So this is the first locomotive I've officially accomplished for 2022, and it's a hell of a locomotive, I'll tell you that. It looks really cool. I'm really anxious to get my model railroad running so I can actually show this thing running, switch around some cars and have fun with it. So that's 4211. The next locomotive I'll be working on is this guy. This is going to be a CITX leaser, a gray ghost, if you will. So I'm going to be stripping this down, completely overhauling, detailing, and repainting that one. So that's another thing, another locomotive you guys can look out for in the future. Alright, so I want to go ahead and finish up the bench here and go ahead and show you guys what else is working, because I got a lot of other cars that I'm working on right now. I'm kind of in the process of selling off stuff, weathering some stuff. So I got some special trash cars that I'm building right now. These have been completely rebuilt and resided. We'll talk about those a little bit later. I got some locomotives out here right now that I'm working on. These cars here, this one is going to be weathered up to sell on eBay. It's a rare NOKL. Picked that up on eBay pretty cheap. This one is a rare SP patch out, so I'm going to be weathering this one from my collection and selling off the old one that I had. So that'll be pretty cool. And then there's the trash flats. These are the ones that I've gotten completed so far. You can see there's quite a few. There's still a lot of work to go, but this is a good kind of kick out of the collection so far of cars I've gotten done. I got these all done this week. Put a lot of time into them, so they all got decal work done, weathering work done, things like that. These are all cars that I'm going to be selling off. They've probably, by the time you see this video, they've already probably been sold. These all pretty much have buyers. I got an HLCX GP38 I'm selling off. I already have a buyer for this thing. I found an old blue box unit in my collection. I'm going to be putting that on eBay here pretty soon. These are actually parts cars. I'm taking parts off these to maintain the fleet of other cars that I have, because the client actually gave 10 of these cars to me from my collection, and I'm just going to be taking parts off of them, and then whatever I have left I'll sell off to a friend that's wanting them for other parts and rebuilding. So that's what those are going to be going for. And then these ones I'm going to be listing later. So here you can see this is the original WC1 2014 that I did. You can see the weathering is not crazy. It really doesn't have any flare or graffiti to it. It's pretty basic. So I'm going to be selling this one off. It's still a rare model, and it's nicely white, kind of lightly weathered, so I will be selling that off. I got another patch out boxcar GACX. This one's nicely detailed up. I'll be selling that off. And then I have a rare original run Golden West SSW patch out car that I'll be selling off. That one's pretty cool. I've had that one in my collection for years now. It's finally time to just kind of let it go. I've weathered it to a point where I just don't want to keep adding more weathering to it, because it's just going to start getting too chunky looking. So it's just better off that I've had my fun with it. I've ran it on plenty of places. It's time for it to let it go. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm working on right now. Like I said, I'm going to be having tons more of these trash flats. It's going to be the main thing I'm going to be working on. And I also have this UPGP40 that by the time you see this I've probably already listed, but that one's been in my collection for years as well, but it's time to let it go. I'm going to be selling that off and giving it a new home. So the last thing I'm going to show you guys is actually the model railroad. I want to talk about what I'm doing out there currently. Actually, just a quick clip here. These are some of the spine cars that are waiting to be put back together. This is how I left them originally. They were all in different levels of disassembly. These cars here in the back are waiting to get new KD couplers. These cars are waiting to get renumbered with couplers. These cars have already been renumbered. They already have new couplers. They need to have the wheel sets reattached and then final weathering applied. So these are going to be the next ones I work on, and then these, and then finally all of these. We got a hell of a lot of work to go, but that's going to be the rest of the trash flats. I don't have the containers out right now. They're not down here. They used to be, but I got all 200 of them in a storage box out in my garage. I'll pull those out at another time so you guys can see those, but that's pretty much where I'm at with all those trash flats. So I wanted to finish up by kind of giving you guys an update on the model railroad, and there hasn't been too much difference or anything like that out here, but I have been working on trying to adjust some issues, including that short circuit, which we'll get to in a second. But I'm actually in the process of redoing a section here, and you're looking at this like, what the hell am I doing? Well, the reason I'm ripping up track is because I got too ambitious the first time around. I made some mistakes when I started laying in the track here, and I just put way too many switches in. I had switches butted up against each other that were causing me some problems too. Just a whole bunch of different little issues like that. Plus I have a pretty decent gap on this modular section, this middle section. I'm also redoing the yard lead because the yard lead was not really done exactly how I should have done it the first time. Everything was, I don't know, kind of laid out in a manner where at this point here, coming around this tight curve, cars trying to enter this yard had a tendency to kind of fall off and string, basically string line. So my problem was that I didn't really plan that out too well. And I'm going to basically rearrange the switches a little bit. Up to this point, this switch is going to stay in place. This is where it should be. I don't have any problems with that for the most part, but I'm just going to be changing just a few little things around basically. But for the most part, everything on this section is okay. I'm going to be doing some rewiring down there as well when we get to that, but this is where I'm just kind of working on stuff and just improving pretty much the things. The other big issue, and one of the big reasons I'm redoing the track as well, is because when I built this middle joining section, the modules warped. So this whole center table is actually bowed in, and I'm going to try to true it up, straighten it, but also going to redo the track so that it's much more even and a smooth transition, because you go from this kind of gradient leading around this curve and then all of a sudden it drops down. I was having issues with derailments at this point here, so I'm improving this curved out section, and then I'm going to smooth that out, just like I said, rearrange the switches a little bit. So that's what I'm doing currently. I'm in the process of ripping up some cork road bed, and of course it looks pretty ugly, but I'm just doing one little section at a time. Talking about the short, because the last time you guys saw the layout I made a quick video talking about trying to find a short, and I did confirm that it is in fact a short, not the power pack itself. The power pack is fine, and I have good reason to believe that the short is in fact in this section, and as a matter of fact I think I do know where it is. It has something to do with this Y turnout. This is an Electrofrog switch, not an Insulfrog switch. All my Insulfrog switches have worked fine. I can run pretty much anything on these, well I could before the thing went down. But after narrowing it down, I definitely have reason to believe that the short is being caused by this switch here. So that leads into my little thing about possibly removing the center siding. So as you can see, there is a center siding, just like the prototype. This is modeled. All the trains will run over fine on this, but it's these switches that are causing the problem. And to be real honest with you, I only installed this center siding because it was there on the prototype, but I really don't have any like real plans to use it that much anyway. So I will probably not wire this middle section up, to be honest. That might seem kind of silly, but I just it's there as a cosmetic look. But even a lot of these switches down here, they're only there to keep things moving, but I really wouldn't use them to begin with. And they don't necessarily need wired up, so I'm really kind of deciding what I really want to have that I can actually run trains on, and what's just not necessary at this point. So this center siding might stay here as a cosmetic look, but I probably won't wire it up now. I know it seems kind of weird, but it'd be rather kind of better than, you know, having to rip all this up and then damage my Pico switches and things like that. So I'd probably wire these up for straight mainline service and then just leave this as is unpowered is my current idea. And then just like focus on mainly the yard tracks. Because at this point, what I'm really focusing on is I want to be able to run the trains. I want to be able to enjoy the scenery. I want to be able to run stuff, make wide transfers. I have what I want in terms of switching. I'm going to be doing most of my switching in this section and being able to store cars kind of in this yard section here as well. That's really what matters to me most of all, is that. So, you know, when you build these model roads, you do got to prioritize what you want. And in this case, I'm having to make some little changes, but for the most part, it's not a big thing. Fortunately, I didn't do any big scenery work or anything like that in these new sections before I had to make these changes. But, you know, I'm not discouraged at all. I've just been taking a break and redesigning some stuff. But I do got some flex track and new switches coming in this week. So hopefully by this weekend, I can actually start rebuilding some of this and start getting these wires tucked back in. And hopefully have this power pack operating again, because I really do want to be able to start running stuff. I never got to actually show any of my trains running, but there for a while I was running a few little trains in this section to kind of give it a test on DC power, and it was pretty fun. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I never got to actually film it. So hopefully once I get that running, I can actually do a couple little switching, you know, some switching sessions over here, do stuff like that, have a little fun with it again. So anyways, that's going to wrap up this big update. I'll keep you guys posted on what else I get done. Stay tuned for more content, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Take it easy.